Hello and welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the video as you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like, because the purpose of this channel is educational in regards to atheist and deconversion issues and any issues related to those issues. A hearty shout out to the Rabyd Nation. Join the nation by hitting that subscribe button, and if you want to support the channel in a more tangible way, hit the join button and your membership options that will lead to citizenship will be presented to you. Today I want to continue on my series on the case against God's existence, or a case against the existence of God. I've defined it both ways in the titles, but the issue is mostly laying out the various cases and arguments against the existence of God. I also have to give my disclaimer. I'm not necessarily saying I hold any of these positions per se. I'm an agnostic atheist, but I'm examining the claims of saying those that say there is no God and seeing if there's any merit to them and analyzing them, because later I want to take a little bit more of a deep dive at some of them because I think they're more convincing in general. And today up on the docket is Theological Non-Cognitivism. Theological non-cognitivism is the argument states that either the God concept is either ill-defined or self-contradictory and thus is nonsensical in notion. In other words, like when theists define God as timeless and spaceless, for instance, the non-cognitive says that's a nonsensical notion, that's a self-contradictory notion. You can't say something exists and then say it's timeless and spaceless, because those two qualities would indicate non-existence. Another example would be like a disembodied mind, that God is a disembodied mind. We don't have any way of testing that or verifying the idea of a disembodied mind even exists. So it's kind of either a nonsensical concept or a self-contradictory concept. Kind of going along with this, there is an element of non-cognitivism that states because God's spirituality, whatever, all the woo factory basically, is not subject to scientific tests to verify their existence, they maybe don't exist, or they're just nonsensical. We can't even look at them to verify them in the first place, so why are we even running with this concept, okay? So the idea of non-cognitivism is that what theists present as arguments for God is either self-contradictory or ill-defined, or their definitions just don't make any sense, and so therefore it kind of proves that what they're trying to prove doesn't exist. Okay, I think if you want a good deep dive of this, a little bit deeper than what I'm giving, there's a video by TMM, which I'll link in the description and over my head, where he talks about Matt Dillahunty's rejection of theological non-cognitivism, but TMM kind of goes into the fact that he doesn't think that Matt Dillahunty is using an argument that is actually a good representation of what theological non-cognitivism is. There's definitely a stronger element than what Matt Dillahunty uses in that video, and he's reacting to what Matt Dillahunty is saying, so you'll get his both sides of the argument from TMM and Matt Dillahunty. So it's a pretty good video. So I'll link it. But it goes farther and deeper than just that things are gibberish. Okay, the non-cognitivists will also argue that things are badly defined. It's not just badly defined, but the definitions are self-contradictory, and that God isn't really verifiable by scientific tests. Okay, we can't use science to analyze God. Okay, because if God is timeless and spaceless, science suddenly doesn't have the ability to analyze anything that doesn't reel, so to speak. If it doesn't reel in the reality of time and space, then you can't even study it. So if I can't study it, does it exist, becomes a really valid question. So theological non-cognitivists kind of nail a lot of things here. I think a counter maybe be that, maybe science has certain limitations and there's something else that we need to come up with that can actually engage the subject of God. What that would be is never proposed, at least not that I'm aware of. The other counter would be, because God exists outside of space and time, or doesn't have space and time, or whatever. I suppose you could use a theological concept that God does take up space and time outside of this space-time continuum, but that doesn't really make sense either, because if they're in the space-time continuum, then they're part of the continuum, so how could they be outside of it? So it becomes, I don't know, a word game, a definitional game, which, can be a little bit dicey. My evaluation of this argument, I got to give it props in the fact that it attacks a lot more concepts than it initially proposes. Like a lot of non-cognitivists you'll hear will talk about the classical definitions of God, but what I don't think they realize is they also nail a lot of other concepts. If a deity of any kind, or a supernatural force or a supernatural event, is described in any way that is either gibberish or self-contradictory, then this argument says, hey, whoa, wait, that's self-contradictory, or that's kind of gibberish. Can you define that better? And that's kind of what this argument really does. It really pushes theists to really define their terms and put their terms in non-self-contradictory terms, or please don't give me gibberish. And so I think it hits a lot of things like polytheism, pantheism, other things. Maybe not pantheism so much, because as TMM points out, pantheism actually has a consistent definition. The universe is God. So there is kind of that give and take of definitional qualities that this does hit. I think it has that ability to just kind of analyze things. One of my great frustrations, for instance, in the arguments for God's existence is sometimes when you're arguing with a theist, you try to get them to define what they mean by God. Okay? And the reason you do that is because, from my perspective, once a theist defines God in certain places in the arguments for God's existence, what happens is you suddenly realize that their definition of God doesn't fit the truth value of their claim, or it is indeed self-contradictory with what they're trying to prove. Okay, like the moral argument, once I get them to define what are you talking about, which God are we talking about here, then you say, well, how does that definition of God make sense? And then the next thing you ask is, how does that definition of God equate to objective morality? Why would that God want objective morality? Okay, so on and so forth. How does that work? How do you establish the connection? And one of my frustrations with the arguments for God's existence is the lack of definition of terms, or terms that don't make any sense, or they're self-contradictory. And I think this argument points out the real flaws in a lot of the arguments for God's existence. Does it make a good case against God's existence? Well, that's my evaluation. Just because people can't define things well don't mean that they necessarily don't exist. Okay, so I think this argument does put some nasty knocks to gods and spiritual concepts that are indeed self-contradictory. Okay, so maybe those concepts of God or those concepts of spirituality can be discarded because they don't make any sense. I think the whole timeless, spaceless God is a nonsensical notion. So I think I can throw that away as well. But it doesn't mean that somebody won't come up with a definition of God, or a God that isn't self-contradictory or isn't, in that realm of being gibberish. And so, yeah, is it a silver bullet that gets rid of all of them? Not quite. But it is a very powerful argument, in that it gets rid of a lot of God concepts and saying, no, wait a minute, that's self-contradictory, or that's gibberish, or, well, you really put your concept of God outside of scientific inquiry and rational inquiry there, didn't you? So it kind of puts it into this different realm. And I think in that respect, it's a very strong argument. It's not a silver bullet against all the concepts of God, but it does I think it creates an atmosphere and discussion. I think Matt Dillahunty is wrong. I agree with TMM in saying that this argument is a discussion ender. It's not a discussion ender. It's a discussion atmosphere of saying, well, wait a minute, you need to define your terms better. You need to show me how this makes sense. Okay, how your concept of God makes. That's not a discussion ender. That's a nature of the discussion with theological non-cognitivism, which says, hey, do this right. Don't just give me gibberish terms and assert things about God without evidence, or assert things about God that are self-contradictory if you really think about them. And so it is a very powerful argument in that it kind of shows the flaws of the definitions of most people when it comes to God and things like that. So I think in that respect, it's a powerful argument. Is it a perfect one? No, because I think theologians could come up with maybe definitions about God or gods or whatever that aren't self-contradictory. I don't know. I think polytheism automatically accepts contradictory stuff because it has multiple gods that are in conflict with each other often. I think pantheism might give us the universe is God might give us a coherent definition. So it's like, okay, the universe is God. We can study the universe and come to some knowledge about God. So it's not completely a silver bullet. I do think it hits the whole timeless, spaceless nonsense, and I think it also hits the whole disembodied mind pretty good. It's like you're creating concepts that don't make any sense, that aren't scientifically verifiable, and that kind of is convenient for you because it keeps you out of rational and scientific inquiry, doesn't it? And the Theological Non-Cognitivism does a very good job in pointing that out. Well, I think that's it for this one. Thanks for stopping by. This has been a good running discussion. I'm going to keep it going. I got a few more. I think after I get done with this one, I think a discussion of the standards of evidence might be a good starting point before I begin another round of arguments for and against God. So we'll see if that works. But right now I'm still going. I don't know. I've got a few more of these to go as I read through the list. So we'll see how far this goes. But thanks again for stopping by. I appreciate every like, share, and subscribe. As always, live your best life. You only get one go around and then it's over. So make sure you're spending your time, your money, your treasure, things that you do well on building a life for yourself and the people you love and care for and making a better world. And don't waste it on the trappings of religion and faith because that's a dead end. I speak from experience. And as always, thanks for stopping by and I'll catch you next time.